You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Susan Walsh, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Susan, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm really pleased to have you on the show today and really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
So, Susan, does every company in the world really have a master data issue? And if yes, why do they?
Yes, they do, and if they tell you they don't, they're lying. Now, the varying degrees of problems that they have will go from small to large, but there's no such thing as perfect data. It doesn't exist.
And why do you think they have these issues? What are the dimensions? Why do they have it? And how does it look?
Well, I think the reason they have it is, first of all, it's never a priority. I think from a senior management level, it's seen as the kind of menial task that, we can give it to an intern or something. Whereas actually, to be able to clean and maintain your data is a real skill. And also, it's a
Mm.
job that nobody wants to do. Well, apart from me and a few other people, it's the kind of nobody wants to do it, and so it's low priority. Always falls to the bottom of the list. There's not any money to do it. And generally, there's only money when there's a huge problem within the business and it needs to be sorted yesterday.
Yeah, and then you always figure out who actually owns the
Mhm.
data. Then you have
Yeah.
the ownership discussion, right? But does
Yeah, and
ownership
in terms
also
of
mean
yeah,
stewardship, right?
nobody owns it suddenly, it's always someone else's problem.
Yeah, but does ownership always then mean stewardship as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some amazing data stewards and data champions within organizations, but I mean, when I'm talking, I always say clean data is everybody's responsibility, the whole organization, not just data people, IT people, tech people, but the whole organization. And getting people, that's a whole culture shift and change, I think, for
Mm.
that to happen.
So you've made an entire career about being the person who says you don't have your data in order, right?
Yeah.
So the burning platform that you're coming out, does it resonate with them if they don't want to really do it? And how's that?
You know, there are so many people I know that would love to call us in to help them with their data, but they can't get the support from elsewhere in the business or the funds to do it. That's the reality. Um, it's, the clients that we do work with are amazing, but then we can't talk about that work because nobody wants to admit they have a
Mm.
data problem either. So it's kind of like, we've built a business off the back of not being able to use testimonials and case studies and things because we can't talk about what we do. It's too super secret.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
but is this all about data entry, or is it also about just data structure or data understanding? Is it data literacy? Is this data silos? What are we actually talking about when we talk about these
I,
data issues?
I think you're talking about all of it. It causes things like duplicates or near
Hmm.
duplicates. Something, we do so much supplier normalization where it's IBM, it's I.B.M, it's IBM Inc., IBM Limited, IBM
Mm.
Australia. Different ways of inputting the same company or the same address or the same name or even the date. The dates is a great one. I was just on a LinkedIn live yesterday, and I do this on any of my live sessions. I always ask people to put how they format their dates in the chat, and it works particularly well when you're talking to one organization because you would think within one organization most of the date formats would be the same, but they're not. You've got day, month, year. You've got month, day, year. You could have your year first, but then you've got separators. Are you using dashes, slashes, dots? Maybe you're not using a separator? So that one date could be formatted so many different ways. I mean, that in itself is a problem. So I think there's not much in terms of governance. which in itself is a boring, scary, intimidating word. Non Data problems are people problems, and a lot of the data that is input is by people who are not data professionals.
Mm.
And getting them on board with the importance of data quality is the biggest challenge because they're intimidated by it. They don't maybe have the technical skills. They don't think it's part of their job or their responsibility. And that's kind of why I created the data coat.
Mm. Data what? Yes.
The data coat, COAT. So I say,
Oh,
make sure
coat.
your
I was like,
data
what
has
were you
its
saying?
coat
I'm
on.
I'm a
Yeah,
Danish.
so
I didn't know. Coat. What is
it's
this?
it's the accent.
Yes, yes, yes. Love it.
It's the same as actually when I go and ask for a Coke at the pub, or
Then you
people
get a
don't
coat.
understand. It's like, is it no Coca-Cola, but it Coke. It's the accent people misunderstand.
Yeah,
But
that's what I'm saying. You don't know if you're going to get a Coca-Cola or coat.
oh
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I want it.
Well, I just get a funny look, like what, what, and even
That's
ask
also a data problem, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, it is because it's not always what we see or read, but it can be what we hear as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, by making sure your data is consistent, so everyone's using those same date formats, so same units of measure, same language. Then it's got to be organized, so categorize it so you can find what you need easily. Make sure it's accurate and agree what accurate is within your department. And once you have your consistent, organized, accurate data, well, then it becomes trustworthy. And that's the magic word because so many people say they don't trust their data,
Mm.
and it's a big problem.
I always also say, you shouldn't really necessarily trust your AI if you don't trust your dashboards.
Well, also the big thing around AI is if you don't know what your data is supposed to look like clean, how will you know if the AI's cleaned it or not?
Good point.
Yeah,
So you need to do the right work before and actually make the real, put the effort in to say, well, how do you want it to look? You have to
yeah,
understand your problems and also understand, the end goal. This is standard gap, right? Isn't it?
mhm,
Current state, future state. You have to do
yeah,
both before you can make the gap.
yeah.
But you said date, right? I actually, from a technical perspective, I think, that's just put it in a database. They have date fields and they can format it whatever way you want when you get in the output, right? Why is that a problem?
Well,
Do people have it in
what will
text format,
happen? Nah,
in
well, what happens
strings?
when you've got silos, multiple systems, and you try and bring them all in together, and you don't know if it's a US date or a UK date or a European date, and uh, you know, again, yesterday I was given some advice, just simple things like don't ever overwrite original data when you're cleaning data. Always create new columns,
Mm.
just to track back where you've come from. So you think some of this is really obvious, but you would be amazed at how many people it doesn't even come into their mind as a thought.
So you're teaching, everyday professionals to do this, or so it's not like big IT projects, is it? Is it everyday professionals focus
Well,
instead, or
the
what is it?
podcasts and talking is more educational stuff, but the day-to-day business is hands-on cleaning
Hmm.
really, really messy data.
Oh, cool.
So, I still get my hands dirty. I still dive into those
Getting your hands dirty
spreadsheets
with
and
dirty
clean
data.
them. Yeah.
So that sounds like must be quite a special person, Susan, to love that.
Yeah, special is definitely the word. And actually, even finding, I've got 4 on my team. Finding people, I've got 2 who do the classification piece. Finding people who are in the right mindset is really tricky. Actually, you have to have a certain kind of way of thinking and
Hmm.
to be able to do this job and enjoy it as well.
But we know we're all data driven today, aren't we?
Yeah, but that's a massive shift. I graduated just over 20 years ago with my dissertation on 2 floppy disks, and Google was barely
Hmm.
around. And there's a lot of my generation at middle to senior management now who are making decisions and don't really understand the tech, and so don't take it into consideration. And actually, I tried to target a lot of the younger generation because they're the future decision makers. They're the ones that can really have an impact on clean data and invest in it. So it's just as important to talk to them as it is to old people like me.
Yeah, yeah, but it's also just you know I tend to think that it's not because people don't want to do it to some extent. That maybe it's because things are in a flux to some. You're moving, you're evolving. If you weren't evolving as a company, you would have your data the way it was. You clean it up, and it'll be static.
Yeah,
But
there's
because
fear.
yeah, and also because there's this dynamics in the enterprise worlds,
Yeah.
right? Then data tends to become something different, something other. You get input out from other places that you didn't expect before. Things constantly change, right?
Or they make it too hard to do what you're supposed to do. Like if I need to input this information, but you have to open like 5 windows to do it, people just won't do it.
Mm.
If you make the process as easy as possible, then people will more likely follow it, especially those that are not technically minded.
How important is this? Do you think in the current AI world that you have your data in order?
Hugely important. Like the most important thing.
Why?
I guess because, like I said before, if you don't know what your data looks like clean and you put it into AI and it comes out, and how do you know if it's clean or not? And then are you using this to make decisions, to talk about things, use statistics, forecast, and it's wrong, then you're going to end up in a big mess.
Mm.
And we should always, I think, I was on something the other, I was on a panel last week for about AI and podcasting, and the moderator said augment, and I think that's what we should think of it as. AI should augment humans.
Mm.
It should help us do our job, but not, we shouldn't rely on it to do our job for us. We still need to have checks and balances in place.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, but what you're saying is also, it's a theme that's been repeating itself throughout a lot of the episodes of the podcast I've had so far, right? That
Yeah.
that you need to get your data in order to work better with AI, right?
Oh, it's been decades of this issue. It's
Yeah, it
still
has.
not
You
being
keep on
fixed.
saying it, right? So does the world really need an AI strategy right now, or do we need to put some serious effort finally behind the data strategy?
You can't have an AI strategy without a data strategy. That's a mouthful. um, but even, you know, just strip it right back. Just get your data, not perfect. Fit for purpose will do. Just get your data to a usable, trustworthy place before you even start thinking. If you don't look at your data and know what the problems are, how can you build a data strategy? Because you don't know what you need to fix.
Mm.
So you really need to get into the nuts and bolts of your data, find out what the issues are, and build a strategy that will fix those issues. And then you can start to plan a longer term strategy with your data, which can then incorporate AI.
But strategy is also, that's a big picture, right? That's about what's upstream, downstream from the company in general, right? And is this really a clean data issue, or is it more a master data issue?
No, I think it's clean data. Um, you can still have master data and it can still be dirty.
Yeah, yeah, but I think sometimes, the silos of the world, which inhibits, progress, efficiency, and stuff like that. That's often associated more with the master data issues than.
Well, I have a real issue with the whole master data slash single source of truth,
Hmm.
because I work with procurement specifically, and I know that they need a specific set of master data that is very different to finance,
Mm.
that is very different to sales and marketing. So what I think we really have is like an overarching kind of sitting on the top, like a company master data, which is for the use of the company. But then I think we need subsets of master data for each different
Yeah, but
industry
master data is
department.
like saying, the VAT number of a company. That's master data for, on a country scale, right?
But then think about this. So in finance, you might want to know the parent-child relationship of a company. So, for example, the parent company of LinkedIn is Microsoft.
Mm.
But from a procurement point of view, you would want that to be normalized to LinkedIn, because if you had the parent company as Microsoft and then classified that data, it would be classified under IT, hardware, or software, whereas LinkedIn is training, recruitment, advertising, social media. So it sits under a very different category.
Mm. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But that also about what data is put available to people. But there's still this, the parent-child company is still the right
It's
ones,
still
still the master,
absolutely
right?
relevant and important, but that's not as important. Well, for procurement, it's important for risk and financial information, but from analytics and looking at how much are we spending with this company, that's not as important.
But this gets me back to my first question, right? The dimensions of the data issue, right?
Yeah.
Is this so? There's the master data issue, then there's a clean data issue, but there's also a data governance issue, isn't there? There's
Oh,
also
yeah.
a data relevance issue. There's also how many issues are there?
Oh, I mean, there are
Just
so many different issues, and if you go into each company, they'll each have their own issues. But honestly, if you had clean data, you wouldn't have so many governance issues. Like if you had a good process in place and put your data coat on, then you would minimize the amount of errors. And it's all about minimizing, not about completely making things perfect. And I mean, I genuinely really believe like a lot of issues would be solved with just clean data. And it's not even about governance, it's about education
yeah, but clean data
and
doesn't
training.
tell it doesn't say Susan's allowed to look at this data. That's not solved by having clean data, right?
No, but looking at it and knowing it's right and you can make decisions based on it,
Obviously.
that is. And if you are a person who's not close to the data, that's even more important to know that you can trust it.
Yeah, trustworthy data, definitely. I always say, digitize first, then digitalize your processes, automate them, and then you can
Yeah.
get some insights in the end, right? And that still holds true, right? That
Yeah,
that
and
that
yeah,
sequence.
I'm
But the
hearing a lot.
digitization, if you miss that out, it's not like you can start to, now we just work on BI and AI, and then we don't want to work on how we get our data in and get it clean, right? Obviously, you need to have these things foundations in place.
All
But
of that starts with people. So all the time at events I hear now, whether it's procurement or data, people, process, technology, in that specific order, you have to get people engaged and on board first. Otherwise, none of it will work.
mm, but it's
So
like
maybe it's
data
not
is
a
like
clean
the
data problem. Maybe it's just a people problem after all.
yeah, and then it becomes a governance problem, doesn't it? When it's a people problem.
Yeah. I mean, get the basics right. Don't scare yourself off or your team off with governance when, let's do some basic processes together with some manuals on how to. And
But I'm just thinking, if everyone has this problem, right, the data problem and
yeah.
some sort of clean data problem, um, could they spend their entire budgets just cleaning their data?
Not if they're smart and have experienced and skilled people.
Because it
Well,
sounds
the
like
whole
it's a
point.
never-ending problem, right? And then you just keep on moving on your data, and you never get to the fun part.
Well, there's also the argument that actually, if it's input correctly in the first place, then you wouldn't have a lot of these problems, and that comes back to people and training and education.
Mm.
And I think that step is often forgotten as well. How often, I mean, it's happened to me so many times. You start a new job and you get sat down at a computer and go, here you go. There's no formal training, there's no processes. You are just left to figure out what to do.
Mm.
And that's when the problems start.
But let's take um, a rough estimate, very rough. How much are people enterprise today spending on fixing their data issues, and how much should they be spending percentage
Well,
of
I mean, they're
spend?
not really spending, that's the problem. I
Mm,
would say like less than 0.5% probably of their turnover.
mm,
How much should they be spending? To get it to a place where it's good, maybe up to 100K, and then after that, it's just ongoing maintenance and care.
mm,
It doesn't have to be millions and millions of pounds, euros, dollars, whatever. You can do this sensibly, and I think potentially there's lack of education awareness at senior level on what actually is required of data cleaning, and so maybe they think it's either more than they think, or it's not as important as they think. So again, more education. And that's why I come and talk on podcasts, go to events, spreading that word as far and wide as, and in a different fun way, because let's face it, it can be such a boring topic. It really can. We have to inject some fun into it.
Yeah, I try to go master data and governance, and you keep on going back, just cleaning the data, adding an extra
Well,
column.
you can't govern messy data.
No, that's
It's
right.
impossible.
So it's the basic stuff, right? It's all
Yeah.
down to the
And
basic of the
obviously,
pyramid.
it's very naive of me to just think that it's about clean data. There is way more to data governance than that, but my angle is specifically data quality.
Yeah, but I'm also trying to pick your brain on how does that affect all the other things, right? And how does that matter? Why does it matter? Because you're positioning of your data cleaning projects, right? The classification projects and stuff you do must also be tied to some of the other issues as well,
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes it's hard to put it into a business perspective. So I have a couple of different analogies. One is, if you clean your house weekly, you're spending a small amount of time each week cleaning your house. If you leave it for 2 months, you're going to have a massive job on your hands to clean it once every 2 months.
Mm.
And data cleaning is the same. And then the other analogy is that data is like a classic car. It's only valuable and usable if you look after it. If you have a classic car, you have to make sure it doesn't rust. You have to run the engine, polish it, clean it, keep it in a
Mm.
dry place. And data is the same. And maybe we need to start talking more about data as something else to get people engaged.
Do you have an old car and do you clean your house every day?
I don't have an old car, but I don't clean my house because I pay someone else to do it.
Okay,
I am
good.
I'm so undomesticated. It's
But
unbelievable.
everything in your kitchen is labeled, right?
It's kind of like faced and categorized. Yeah, I've got a
Yes.
cupboard for this group of foods. I've got a cupboard for that group of foods. I've got a cupboard for my beverages. Yeah, it's totally categorized. Yeah,
That's
you're right.
perfectly normal. Have everything categorized. That's how you do. But
I used to work in retail, and I worked in a shop for 5 years. So I make sure everything faces the front and everything. Like,
oh
I'm
no.
conditioned now.
So awesome. But I wouldn't have expected anything less, Susan. But
Yeah, I think it probably stemmed from there.
taxonomy, right? That's also data cleaning is not just data cleaning. There's a lot of sub disciplines in that, right? But taxonomy is also super important, right? But do people even know what it is? What is it, and why does it matter?
No, some people think it's taxidermy, which is a completely different industry.
Yes.
um, so taxonomies, and there's ontologies as well. I work with spend taxonomies, but you could have taxonomies even for websites, right? Retail, you could have like clothing as your level 1, and then level 2 could be women's and men's, and then level 3 could be like trousers, skirts, dresses, tops, and then you could filter it by like summer, or like if it's dresses, long dresses, short dresses. So there's lots of different things that taxonomies are. Sometimes they're also known as category trees.
Mm,
And what they're good for is categorizing and putting items into buckets so that they're easy to find
mm,
at its really basic level. But I've seen some horrifically bad taxonomies where you have multiple, sometimes there's more than one right answer within the
yeah.
taxonomy.
Yeah. Obviously.
That leads to misinterpretation, misclassification, or you've got one item
Ambiguities,
split
right?
over
Yeah.
2 categories. That's just as bad. The one thing I say is, always have something simple that's chart friendly, analytics friendly, and that someone could come in off the street and be able to understand it.
But that's also, it's a digital twin question, isn't it? You have to have things that
Yeah,
look like the real world, right? And if it doesn't look like it, if it can it becomes weird, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, and it can again lead to misinformation, not being able to find what you're looking for. Like if you go on a retailer's website and you're looking for some pink trousers,
Mm.
if they're not categorized as that, you're not going to be able to find them.
And, so, but can AI help us do this better?
Parts of it, absolutely. Where it's very, very good is in terms of classification, it's very good with actual parts. So things that have a part number, nuts, bolts, screws, those kind of things.
Mm.
Where, it comes from a catalogue that's online somewhere and it can pull that factual information. Ask it to make a decision about what something should be, where there's context involved, and it's awful. It's really bad.
It will, it's just stochastic, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so anything service based is going to be an issue. Even things like we tried to normalize supplier names with ChatGPT, and it was pretty awful, to be honest. But when we asked it for the parent companies of those same suppliers, it came back with pretty good factual information because all that information is in the public domain. But ask them to start normalizing and remove like limited or inc at the end of a word, and it's
Really?
making a decision, and then it doesn't like that so much.
Well, I think actually usually we have some good examples of it good at being good at that. Also being good at categorizing. We use it to categorize, spend, where we have a mapping table, and then we tell it, find, m- give it some information about a company, for instance.
You know what? It's changing at a crazy rate.
Yeah, yeah, obviously,
So
but it's just this
it
thing,
won't be long, but again, you can't blindly trust it. You have to check it afterwards and make sure it's right and correct anything that's not right.
We also tried for a utilities company to try to getting these emails where people are moving addresses all the time, right? So people are
Oh,
moving,
yeah.
and then they get these forward from lawyers, from real estate agents, and blah blah blah, blah. So stuff like just forwarded tons of times. So in this email there are like maybe sometimes 10 addresses, right?
Wow.
And it has to figure out which one is the right one, which is in the bottom
Yeah.
or a little bit up from the bottom or something like that. And that's often
Mm,
a problem for any kind of automation. But the Gen AI models, especially the bigger models, right, GPT-4s and stuff, they
yeah.
actually found it because they understood the context that the others were in a signature context, and this was outside of the
Okay.
signature
I
context
think that it's going to be good for specific tasks. So
all the time. Yes,
if you're training it on one specific task, it's going to be phenomenal.
you have to know what
So
your problem is, and you have to
yeah,
you have to apply
yeah.
it to a problem, not just say this will fix anything out of the box.
Yeah,
I'll
you're
never do
you're
that.
so right there. I think
Yeah.
that sometimes people don't realize that.
So there's a thing, where AI can help us get some better data, so it's not just the other way around that data helps us get better AI. We also need, but the big models, right? The big GPTs, they haven't even vetted their data. They don't know what's in it. Isn't that a
Oh, you don't
problem?
know the source of it, you don't know if it's trustworthy, but if
You
you're
must hate
building
that.
yeah, if you're building something internally on your own, based on your own data and is learning from your data, then you've got a way better chance of it being successful. But
Mm.
something that is trying to be everything to everyone is not gonna work well.
But you must hate that, right? That it's just trained on whatever crap.
No, I mean,
It's
it's
not
all
clean
progress.
data.
It's all progress, and we had data problems before AI came along.
Yeah, but
So
the Gemini case. You remember that last week with Reddit data, where you
remember,
where they fed it the Reddit data. They bought access to Reddit. Google bought
yeah.
access to Reddit data, and then they fed that to the model, right? And then they started saying things like, people are say, what should I do to help to I have a depression. What can I do? And then said, oh, a good suggestion would be to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh my
And then it
goodness.
referred to a Reddit
Uh,
discussion where they said that. And how many rocks should a person eat a day? Oh, 1 to 2 rocks is recommended, right? Use some non-toxic glue to get your cheese to stick on the pizza. It said stuff like that. There's tons of it online. Just look at that.
that's terrifying.
But they don't clean it, right? That's the point. They don't even look at the data, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, rubbish in, rubbish out will remain until the end of time.
Mm,
But again, that there's I think I guess that's where conscience and ethics and morals come into it, because
mm.
if
But you just
somebody's
on
in such a vulnerable position that they
yeah.
actually then go and jump off a bridge, that's terrifying.
That's terrible. It's a terrible answer. It's really a horrible answer.
Yeah,
From a
but it
joke thread on Reddit, right? That they
no, but
just
we
ate
we need
and
we need to know about
regurgitated.
this stuff so that we can fix it.
Yeah,
That's the thing. We need to have to go through this.
have to go through the data, right?
Yeah.
But that's also why
Also, it
there's
just shows. There's some really horrible people out there.
yeah. People who make some jokes on some sites for some jokes that are not
Yeah.
fun, but then it ends up in Google, and then suddenly the Google
You know
searches
what the magic word is
replicate
there?
you.
It's context, because that was taken out of context, and that's
Probably yes.
where we're still learning about context in AI. So
Yeah. And when you said those, you said coat and coke, right? It made me think that people tend to say that it's really good at understanding language. Obviously, it's a language model, so it understands language in a context, but it doesn't necessarily, when we don't speak to it, doesn't have the extra verbal or non-verbal things attached to it, right? So a sentence could be understood in multiple ways,
yeah,
like I never said we'll lay off employees, or I never said we'll lay off employees, or I never said we'll lay off employees, right? You
yeah.
see, those there's the difference to whatever word you're putting an emphasis on, right? So there's this
Well, I'll tell you
semantics also
something.
is a problem here, right?
So AI can translate every single language in the world and listen and understand it, but it cannot grasp the Scots dialect yet. And so, one of the there's a word in Scotland that a lot of Scottish people have problems with,
Mm,
depending on which region of Scotland you're from. So, you can have a lady called Carol, Carol,
mm.
Carol, but then you have a guy called Carl, who's Karl. Now, because of
Carl,
the way
okay.
we roll our R's, I can only say Carol. I can't say car. Like my mouth
Carl,
literally
Carl,
contorts. I
Carl,
can't
right?
say it like that. So yeah, again, it's still got lots to learn.
But yeah, but my point was also just there's this language is not just language. Language is also there are categories of it, and
Yeah,
how we understand. When we talk to each other, we use
like
this extra
emphasis.
verbal non.
Yeah,
We use extra verbal, which is emphasis, and
yeah.
non-verbal things because language in itself is not precise enough, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking to each other right now, and people will be able to listen to us, but we're actually like we can see each other, and I've been giving you hand gestures and making
Hmm.
signs, and nobody can see that. So yeah, that would not be yeah. If you were just listening, you wouldn't be able to maybe interpret it in the same way.
That's true, and that's but we do still do a lot of extra verbal here. That's why there's this emphasis on some things, and we make
Yeah.
that all the time, right? But it's just this, language is just not just language. Data is not just data. There's always this, the taxonomy and the understanding of what the context is really really important
Hmm.
to make it productive, right? Just as you're saying, and I think I just think that somehow there's this trend with these big AI models where we feed them everything that the trend is the opposite of what you're actually advocating. You're advocating know your data, clean your data, control your data, master data, and taxonomy, right? But the rest of the world is just feeding whatever into an AI transformer.
Let's throw it at the wall.
I bought 10,000 GPUs, right? And here's some data.
Yeah.
Let's come back in a month and see what happened, right?
It's like a new toy, isn't it? Everyone wants to play with it and then see if they can break it.
Yeah, but it also must be to someone like you seeing that opposite trend, right? What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm just letting everyone get on with it, and I'm just staying in my lane, in my cleaning data lane, and honestly, I can say that we had our best year last year. We're getting busier, not quieter. So
Mm,
I think let everyone let the dust settle. I'm under no illusions. AI will be here, and when I feel confident enough to use it, we'll use it to enhance what we do. But right now, what the world needs more than anything is people who know how to clean data,
mm, mm.
because it's a rare skill already.
We need to take our
It's
data
like a
seriously.
craftsman, some of the craft skills are dying out, and kind of like being able to clean data and read data and understand it, that bit's getting forgotten.
Mm.
You don't get taught that at university. You get taught coding and all the technical skills, but what about the interpretation? That bit's missing.
So, you're saying that there's a, just like we just talked about, there is a meaning to data as well that's getting lost to some
Yeah,
extent.
yeah.
So, and that's what it means for you to be a classification guru, because that's what you're branding yourself on all the time, right?
Yeah. It
So,
is. But really, I most of the projects we work on are one-offs. We want to set the client up. so that they can go off and manage their own data themselves. We don't want to be that crutch. Some people, so there are some businesses where that is needed,
Mm.
but on the whole, we always advocate that you look after and manage your own data, get to know it, because the more you look at it, the more obvious it is when things aren't quite right.
Mm. So, when you're a guru, you also have some idea of what, some kind of end goal, or, a dharma, or nirvana, right? But what is the data dharma, and how do you get to nirvana?
I think just data quality, data cleaning being a priority, being more widely recognized as important. I think that is the dream. There's no such thing as a perfect world where everything's clean. It's getting people to focus on it more and actually think about it as a real important step in any process that you're doing.
But okay, here's another perspective, right? We're optimizing so many things all the time. We're speeding up things. The world is speeding
Yeah,
up. More people today have much more responsibility for many more processes than they did 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, right?
yeah.
So is this speed not also the reason why we're sort of slacking off on data quality and data cleaning sometimes, because we just don't have the attention span for it? And
No,
should we really require, this is my key question, should we really require people to know this, or should we require this of our systems instead, building better controls into the systems we're using?
well, in an ideal world, yes, but what I'm seeing across the globe is layoffs, and the people that are left have more work to do than ever.
Mm.
And again, it's that I have a million things to do. What's going to fall to the bottom of my list? It's going to be the data quality piece.
Yeah, but you see what I just took a look, like an introspective look, and said,
Right.
I'm missing. I see myself as well sometimes, not registering data at the right places.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we're all
and
guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly, because it was so busy, right? Things are moving so fast all the time, and that's why I'm saying, maybe it's not just something to teach me. If I don't have the time, you can teach me anything, right? And I'll still not do it. Maybe it's something we should find a way to get, systems to help me with, right? We have lots of systems that capture attention all the time. Why not make systems better at
Well,
capturing our data and our attention, right?
yeah, I think, but again, it comes down to getting systems to focus on specific tasks rather than one thing that can do everything, which is what I think a lot of people fall into the trap of. Um,
Mm.
Anything that can be automated and improved and save time through tech, AI, whatever it is, I'm all for, as long as it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. However, I know there will always be, even if it's just 1% of data, there will always be a fraction of data that needs to be looked at by a person. Like that bit will never go away.
The centerpiece of all everything you've said so far has also been, right, that it's actually not just about cleaning the data. That's not what I'm hearing, actually, although
Yeah,
you've said that tons of times. But
yeah,
it's actually understanding what clean data should look like.
that's true. Yeah,
That's the biggest task, isn't it? And that's also
yeah,
why, you can't just use AI to fix it, because there'll always be a task in discussing what does it have to look
yeah. And
like.
actually, let's define what clean data is for our
Yeah,
organization, and then let's use some tech to fix that,
yeah,
rather
fix
than
the
just
data.
buying an off the shelf tool hoping that it'll do something.
Yeah, and I think, I know we've discussed this on email, right? But I'm pretty sure that when we talked a month or two ago before this podcast, I can't remember when it was,
Yeah,
we talked about the modernization of IT system. I'm pretty sure we did at some point, and or let's just discuss it anyway, because you
yeah.
say
Let's
you
do
can't
it.
remember it, but it
Yeah,
was about modernizing. People had all these old systems that they built, proprietary systems, or customized systems they made in the noughties and 90s, right? And then suddenly everyone moves to standard in the 2010s, and lately as well, which is also a good thing, because it's easier from an IT perspective to maintain. It doesn't become legacy that easily. But
yeah,
but uh, I just remember you saying, I'm pretty sure it was you, because I have notes on it, that the things you had in these older systems in the noughties and 90s, or you've actually, the reason they were so customized was because you've added this data taxonomy layer to it. You spend hours and hours and hours and days, months and years building up. representations of your company and taxonomies in these systems that made them cumbersome and big, right? But also made them very, very precise on what your actual problem was. And now everyone's just sort of mixing that out and twisting that over to a standard system that is catering to a
Yeah,
best practice in the market, but it's
I,
not true, not
I
necessarily what the
kind
company looks like.
like
Maybe you
that
said
doesn't
that in an
sound.
epiphany, but isn't this true?
I feel like we had a conversation, something, but not quite that. But
Oh,
yeah,
that was what I heard.
yeah,
But do you agree with this?
yeah.
Do you agree with what you said that you didn't say?
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, no. Yeah, I guess everything was built for a specific purpose, whereas now everything is more kind of everything to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So this is today's the best practice world, right? But you're actually saying, no, you have to look at what kind of company you are and figure
Oh
out
yeah,
how does the
yeah,
data look fit for that, and how does the processes fit for that. And that's why I really actually
definitely.
like that perspective. Because I've always been like standard. Obviously, that's the way to go. And I never, and that was easy because it seemed there were no real, pitfalls to it
Hmm.
until you said what you didn't say, but what I heard you say, you probably maybe didn't
I
say, but which
probably
I
did
think is
say
very, very,
something. Yeah.
maybe it's just my inference AI just making really great insights here. But I actually really like that perspective, saying that there's this customization, the proprietariness of a tailored solution is actually the digital twin everyone's now trying to create. That was what we actually made with these enterprise applications back 20 years ago.
Yeah, like something is coming back to me, but I can't. I guess. Yeah. It's definitely this whole kind of be everything to everyone is definitely a data quality problem issue. Like, if we look at Salesforce, I hear all the time, "Oh my goodness, Salesforce data's a mess."
Mm.
Um, and maybe that's because that one kind of template doesn't work for every single type of business.
Yeah. So
Not to not to not to diss Salesforce because it's a global tool that a lot of people use, but I don't know, maybe that's what it is. It's like you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
yeah, and companies are not round, all of them, right?
Yeah.
But you, if we take that assumption, right, and say, okay, this is something that you actually to some extent think, right, and you also like with the generative AI, you don't believe in this all, and you don't believe in the anything animal or anything technology, right? So, but you work with data and the foundations, and you do it also in Excel a lot, right, Susan? That's also part of
No,
it.
no, 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 no. Let's no, no. So I talk I share with people how to do a lot of processes in Excel because that's a common tool,
Yes.
but as a business, we hardly ever use Excel.
Oh, okay, good, 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 good.
So just to be clear on
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
we
because I thought you said that last time, like something as well. I heard you say Excel is good for so, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
it's but actually no, and there are some instances. We have a tool called Omniscope, but there are instances where it's easier just to open up a spreadsheet and do a quick
Mm,
formula in Excel.
sure,
That definitely has its role and its purpose, but use the right tool for the right job.
obviously. But what I want to ask was not necessarily, let's forget the Excel thing. Let's say the data thing and the, not go standard, but actually look at who you are, and the AI cannot solve the whole world and everything. Are you a tech conservative, Susan?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, Probably actually. I don't have I don't use Alexa or any kind of things in the house to turn my lights on and off. I can do that myself. I don't even use Siri. I kind of use just tech for what I need it for. I
Mm.
don't try to over engineer stuff. I mean, if we could get some tech that could cook for me, that would be amazing because I also hate cooking. um, but yeah, no, I'm not that person that has to be the first to try this, that, and the next thing.
No, you're more of a habit adopter than an
Let's
addiction
yeah,
adopter.
let's sit back and see what happens, and then like I waited so long to for Windows 11. Like I
Mm.
waited over a year, and when I thought the time was right, I installed it. It crashed my whole laptop, and I lost everything from Windows 10.
Mm.
So
So are you a skeptic? Are you just um, ignoring it? Are you a skeptic?
I'm definitely skeptical. I want to see everyone else kind of test it and break it first.
And make money on them failing.
We'll always be here to clean up the data, so it's
Yes,
fine.
cleaning up the mess afterwards. Love that.
We'll be there with our little brushes sweeping up the mess afterwards.
But how do we, how do you think, how should people avoid, that generative AI ends up producing more data issues than it could solve?
Know what you're putting in and know what it should look like when it comes out. Like, that's the most important thing. Like, sense check it. Be familiar with your data. And actually even start on a small subset of data, test it first. Don't throw your whole
Mm,
system at it. Focus on one area that you know very well so that you can test that and see how it looks.
mm. But what about then if, with Copilot and everything, that some of the big techs are just throwing it at our systems without we
Oh,
even having a say in that?
please. I tried it and it was awful. It was like, "No, you're not co-piloting anything here. Leave me alone."
That's the skeptic again.
Yeah.
But Susan, I've loved this conversation with you. It's been a great
Yeah, it's been
episode,
great.
and I have a final question for you that we always do on the only
Yeah,
constant. So I hope you're ready for that one.
I'm ready.
So Susan, what is the only constant?
Ooh, what a good question. So apart from death and taxes, the only constant is the fact that there will always be dirty data. Now, it might be a small bit, it might be a big bit, depending on where you are, what you're doing, but it affects our lives, all of our lives. Even if we are not tech people, think of pensioners. They are still affected by dirty data with getting their mail sent to the wrong place or the wrong name on an account. It is our responsibility as data users and owners to minimize those errors and risks, to make sure that that is a small constant and not a big constant.
Will we ever get efficient if we don't fix that, Susan?
I think we will become more efficient, but it's like saying will we ever have perfect data? No, we won't. We'll become more efficient, but I think as long as there are humans involved, we are human, we make errors, and so therefore there will always be errors.
That's a good question, Susan. Answer, Susan, not a question. That's a good answer. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for being on the only constant. It was a
Thanks so
pleasure.
much for having me on.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.